veterans, and it recognizes the special service that each veteran has delivered to our country. And it is a joint initiative between the Veterans Administration and hospices across the nation. I happen to work for Kauai Hospice as a chaplain. So today we are very honored to be here to conduct this ceremony. Now what's going to take place is we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, then we're going to play the military marching song from the particular branch of service, and then we will go ahead and present the certificate. Then we will go ahead and we'll have General Hertog share some background about Bob and his career, and then we'll present the certificate and the pin. So at this time, won't you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
All rise, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I'd like to invite Stuart Burley from the U.S. Navy to share the Veterans Creed. Please speak loudly.
Yeah, I will.
I don't know where the stand all looks up on.
I'll make sure that you understand that get into your hearing aid some way.
You want to give him the sheet that he can read?
Can you all hear me down there? Are you okay? Okay. I have a little microphone right here. Veterans Creed. Right here.
Thank you.
It's all right if it's Army, even though I'm Navy. So this is like the Army-Navy game going on right now. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it to you. Here's what it said. This is the creed. I am a veteran. I have seen and done things that many will not understand. I'm a warrior, a member of a team spanning the world. I have served my country proudly and now stand by to serve my brothers and sisters in arms. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen brother or sister. If they are hurt, I will carry them. If I can't carry them, I will drag them. I will help them face their enemies, to include the demons from within. They are my brothers, and they are my sisters. I am a veteran. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
You
you,
need
Stu.
this next time.
There you go. Okay, so in the active duty, every morning, active duty members awoke to reveille. So I think we will start with playing reveille, and then we'll follow with the Army branch song, which is U.S. Field Artillery March. Feel like marching? Feel like marching?
Come on, drive now.
We're still halfway into the ceremony, sir.
And now I would like to tell you a little bit about Bob Hammerquist, if I can. Many times you hear the word hero, and many times it's a word that's overused in this day and age. But when you talk about Bob Hammerquist, a combat veteran who served 31 years and fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, the word certainly applies. I don't know, Bob, if you'd like to read this along with me here. Bob started his long military career after graduating from the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC program from the University of South Dakota. In 1943, he was quickly brought on active duty and sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, where he learned how to be an infantryman, and then volunteered to be a paratrooper, which means he learned how to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. He also had a week of demolition training, which saved his life later on in the war during combat. As a new second lieutenant, he and his platoon were deployed to Europe in late 1944, eventually ending up in Bastogne, Belgium, where he and his men fought against the Germans in the Battle of the Bulge. That battle is remembered as the greatest battle fought by the U.S. Army in World War II. Bob's platoon had the mission to take a certain village, but they were outmanned, outgunned by German tanks, and they had no combat experience and no cold weather clothing to deal with 6 inches of snow. And to top it off, his platoon leader was seriously wounded, so Bob took over. As platoon leader, Bob had to take care of his men, even if that meant taking the boots and outer garments off of dead American and German soldiers to keep them going. In one instance, when faced with German tanks, there were no other options open to Bob and his platoon members. So what did they do? They fixed bayonets and ran across a snow-covered field, yelling at the top of their lungs. The German tanks backed off, and Bob and his platoon took the village and captured some prisoners. The fighting continued, with Bob learning firsthand the real horrors of war. His platoon strength after the Battle of the Bulge went from 50 men down to 17, most killed, wounded, or missing in action. Bob himself cheated death several times, from being shelled with artillery and dodging tank shells fired directly at him. But one day he was standing in his foxhole and a German artillery shell hit a tree above him and exploded, and shrapnel penetrated his steel helmet and his skull. As Bob said, lucky for him, he has a hard skull. Bob's biggest test of courage came in late March 1945. He and his platoon were part of the forces meant to cross the Rhine River into Germany. But in order to do that, they had to cross a large bridge spanning the Issel River. The Germans had laid explosive charges throughout the bridge with the intent of blowing it up and preventing the Americans and the British from advancing. Bob, with his 1 week of demolition training, ran across the bridge, snipping wires and praying he got the right one to disarm the explosive charges. He remembered giving the order to his men that no one was to follow him, as he wasn't sure exactly how to disarm the explosives. But before he disarmed the explosive, Bob had to destroy a tank crew that was slowing their advance to the bridge. For his actions in combat, Bob was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. And for those of you who have not had any time in the military, that is second only to the Congressional Medal of Honor. And I'd like to read you part of his award narrative. Second Lieutenant Robert E. Hammerquist, Infantry, United States Army, distinguished himself by extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy on 29 March 1945 in Germany. When Hotel Company was temporarily forced to cease its advance due to heavy fire from the outskirts of Dolman, Lieutenant Hammerquist moved forward under constant and accurate enemy small arms and machine gun fire and assaulted the anti-tank position which was slowing advance. Destroying the crew with a grenade, Lieutenant Hammerquist urged his company forward in seizing the key bridge to the town. The next day, on the 30th of March, Bob was shot in the chest, just millimeters above his heart, by a sniper as they advanced on the next town. Bob maintained his consciousness long enough to turn his platoon over to his assistant platoon leader. That very serious wound ended Bob's World War II experience, and he was hospitalized for 7 months. Of course, by that time, World War II had ended. After World War II, Bob returned to civilian life for 3 years and had a few jobs, but he also served as a company commander for a unit in the Oregon National Guard for 2 years. In 1949, he was offered a chance to come back onto active duty for several more years in the Army, and that's where he remained. He was assigned to General Douglas MacArthur's Honor Guard Company when the Korean War broke out. He was sent to South Korea and again went into combat, fighting North Koreans all the way to the Yalu River. The tide of the war had changed when the Chinese entered the war, and many units were ordered to retrograde. In other words, get the hell out of there, because the Chinese had moved around when they were blocking the withdrawal. They had to retreat on foot, but Bob realized they needed trucks because the Chinese were gaining on them. Bob and his men found an abandoned motor pool, and his mechanics got enough trucks running to load up his men and make a safe retreat. If a truck broke down, they just hooked it to another truck and they just kept pulling. And it was a good thing they did, because they would have been overrun by the Chinese who were up in the hills as they moved down. They reached Seoul, the capital of South Korea, where they were eventually told, turn around, go north again. Unfortunately, that was when Bob was hit by a mortar shell which severed the tendons in his right lower leg, and he was evacuated out of Korea after having served 7 months there. He was told he would probably never walk again, but after months of therapy and hard work, he proved the doctors wrong. Bob's military career continued for another 2+ decades, which included a tour in Vietnam as the commander of the Long Ben Post, the largest military installation in Vietnam. I'm happy to say he didn't get wounded in Vietnam. He continued to get promoted, achieving the rank of colonel before he retired. His career highlights included commanding a mechanized infantry battalion, being selected to attend Army War College, and then spending 3 years as an Army and Defense Attaché in Indonesia. Bob's very distinguished career decorations included the Distinguished Service Cross, the Legion of Merit with 2 oak leaf clusters, which means he got it twice more, the Bronze Star with V for Valor, which means great courage, with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters, and his list goes on and on. All total, Bob earned 43 different medals and citations for his 31 years in the United States Army. Colonel Hammerquist is truly an American hero.
Thank you all very much.
Colonel Bob Hammerquist, United States Army. We pay special tribute to you for your military service to America and for advancing the universal hope of freedom and liberty for all.
Thank you.
I will be pinning this pin on Bob, with his permission, of course. The pin represents to him and to all who see him wearing it that he is not alone, he's not forgotten, and his service is appreciated. May I pin you, sir?
Put wherever you can find room.
I hope you're not wearing Kevlar. Maybe it is Kevlar.
Do you want some help?
American,
Ah, there we go.
American Legion.
American Legion
I was in
chaplain.
the American Legion.
I'm still
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lifetime member. Yes.
yeah, paid up for life. Yeah. I'm the chaplain for Post 54 Kaua. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colonel Hammerquist, thank you for your service to our nation. Thank you for the sacrifices you've made and your willingness to serve our country. You endured hardships, and you were willing to risk your life to maintain our freedom. On behalf of the Veterans Administration, Hawaii Hospice, please accept our thanks and gratitude. And when you see this pin, know that your service to this nation is deeply appreciated, and we thank you.
Now, you want me to give a speech?
Or do a tap dance, whatever turns you on.
That's your party.
Everybody wants to come by. I'd love to shake your hand. I'll shake all of your hands. Thank you so much. Tell me who you are and what your service was. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bridget has been with me now for 20, how many years?
21 plus.
21 years.
21 plus wonderful years.
If you'd like to hear more about my life and my Army career, come by. You're always welcome at our house. And if you want to catch me someplace, I'll take the time to tell you.
There's one.
I dreamt last night. I didn't know this was coming, but I dreamt about my combat in Germany. Not the others, just Germany. And it was a little bit scary because I had lots of artillery. I was wounded slightly a couple of times. But here I am still today. And thank you so much for coming. You're wonderful folks. Look forward to getting to talk to each one of you. And my wife couldn't handle it without her. We couldn't handle it without Bridget.
Oh yeah. Yes, he could. He did a lot before he met me.
I'm not talking about the early years. The later years.
There's one story that Mary Kay encouraged me to share, and we actually have something in common that we didn't know. Bob, when he was in Indonesia and as an attaché, even though he wasn't in official combat, his mission was to follow what he called overt intelligence, getting information back stateside to what was happening and some of the
My beautiful wife.
changes in the population there and what was happening in the country. And there was a fair Muslim population that they were watching and observing. But at the time, he was with the ambassador in Yogyakarta. One day, he and one other naval enlisted person were in the office when they got a call. The call came from a ham operator on a oil rig off the coast of Indonesia, and he was picking up an SOS from a communications specialist on a merchant marine ship. The Mayaguez, am I pronouncing it right? Mayaguez.
Leadership.
Yeah, and it was a U.S. merchant marine ship with U.S. personnel. They weren't armed, but they'd been boarded by Cambodians. And the SOS coming through was, we're being boarded. They're using weapons. Our crew is being arrested, and we believe their intent is to take our ship.
And so Bob went right to the ambassador and said, Mr.
I called the
Ambassador.
president.
Yeah, wait, we didn't get to that part. Mr. Ambassador, there's an emergency. And he told the ambassador what had come through the ham operator via the communications specialist who locked himself in. And the ambassador said, Bob, that's not in my area. And Bob politely said back, well, Mr. Ambassador, it's in mine.
Good for him.
So he actually went over the ambassador's head, went back to the embassy, and sent for him in his career the first ever flash message direct to the president.
Wow.
Which was a big deal. And Ford got the information, and he mustered jets and helicopters out of Vietnam right now, tout suite, and it was only a matter of hours that they were in the air over the vessel, and somehow with interpreters or megaphones, I don't know what they used, they got the message to Cambodia that they were to release the men. At that point, they were observed from the air having taken the crew off. They'd taken them in on tenders. They had put them in trucks and were trucking them into the center of Cambodia. And the president sent this message: get the men back on that ship, release that ship, or you can kiss Phnom Penh goodbye. But that was the message: you can kiss Phnom Penh goodbye. And they did it. They turned the trucks around. They could see it from the air. Once the message was received, the men went back to the beach, and they were back on tenders, and they were back on the vessel, and the vessel was released. So it was a whole crew of men.
I'd almost forgotten that.
Unfortunately, I learned a sad side of the story. Mary Kay's father was a career military man.
No, he wasn't part of that.
But I know he wasn't part of it. But he knew of it going down, and he shared it with Mary Kay. But Mary Kay is a career officer as well, a 2-star general, and as we like to say, the top cop in the Air Force. She was head of all the Air Force MP service. And as she related to me, and I shared with Bob, and he didn't realize, there was a contingent of military police that actually took off to board the vessel and help secure it and get it on its way to being released. And unfortunately, through some either mechanical problem or pilot error, they don't know, but all of the men aboard, they had 13, I believe.
And plus the helicopter crew crashed and died.
Yeah, plus the pilot and the crash. They were all lost in that effort to save the Mayagez. So his military career continued one way or another until he finally retired in Jakarta at the embassy in 1975. So he was a brave, quick-thinking officer, and it's been my pleasure to be married to him. And I hope you all enjoy his birthday dinner. And I hope you'll stay and have dinner with us as well. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for coming. And enjoy, everybody. And order what you want to drink. And the dinner is, they do have a large bowl of salad greens. I don't know if the people who want salad are sitting together. And they have some of the fettuccine is without chicken. And most is with, but just let the waitresses know what you want and get whatever beverage you're in. Enjoy. I took a picture.
Happy birthday, Bobby.
Yes. We all love you. Smile, Bob. Yay.
Here, the halal has a big hoike. The hoike means recital.
Say happy birthday, Bob.
Happy birthday, Bob. Yeah.
Yay.
They just have machine guns.
You're right. Army parachute. Wow.